Welcome to another episode of Basic Moves for DCS World. Today we're looking at functional RAT, or random air traffic. It's one of the older classes. It's pretty cool, pretty easy to set up. Basically it adds traffic into your mission, spawning at random airports and flying between other airports. It's very, very simple to set up in a basic form, and we'll look at a bit more of an advanced setup to make it a little bit more realistic. So let's have a look at the classes guide at what they have here. So we have RAT, random air traffic, and you can see from the classes guide it's a simple interface for creating random traffic flying around your DCS mission. I find it works particularly well in a server environment where you want to, when people join, you want it to be a bit different with aircraft taking off and landing. Works a lot better with transport category aircraft rather than fighters. I find there's better classes to manage fighters, but for just transport category aircraft moving around the map, adding a bit of sort of dynamic scenery works perfectly. There's explanation on how it all works here. We have the couple of YouTube videos you can look at, and there is also some sample missions you can look at. Basic overview of how it works in that simplest form. If we set it up, it's set for aircraft to spawn at random airports within range of that aircraft, and they'll only move between airports of the same coalition and neutral by default. They won't go to a red airport, or they won't go out of range. So that's its most basic way, but you can tailor it so the aircraft will do a bit more realistic things and fly realistic profiles and altitudes. That's what we're going to look at today. There's an overview of a basic flight plan, how they climb, cruise, holding, landing, how to set up a template aircraft, how to write a basic script, and that's what we'll get into now. So have a read of that. It's all good information, definitely worth reading on what some of the different functions do. And there's also a bit here on the RAT manager, which we're going to look at today as well, because I find this a lot more useful than just spawning a certain number of random aircraft in. Right, so let's dive into the mission editor and have a look what I've set up. So we're at Nevada, the NTTR, and the mission I'm sort of designing here is basically we're going to have a air engagement in this area here, and we're going to have some red 4 aircraft flying out of Groom Lake to facilitate the engagements, and blue 4 will be flying out of both Tonopah and Nellis, and Creech will be our diversion port. Everything else is neutral, and the only thing I've put in here at the moment is just a Harrier on the ground at Nellis, just parked down here, and a static next door to it. And then you would build your mission up with all your client aircraft or player aircraft in there and static scenery, and away you go. But with RAT, we're going to put in some dynamic scenery, just aircraft coming and going, and I want to try and make it realistic for this environment. I don't use RAT a lot in war zones where we're, say, setting a server up as a full-blown war, because if you have a look at this, for example, on Flight Radar 24, there's the live traffic at the moment over Ukraine. You'll note there is nothing here. No one tends to fly around here unless they're a combatant. So for random traffic in war zones, RAT's probably not the thing. There would be no one flying there anyway. But certainly for a training range environment, like our mission we're building, there would certainly be random civil traffic moving around, random military traffic coming and going. All right, let's have a look at our Notepad++, and where are we? Right, here we go. So we have this lesson 10 random air traffic. It's a blank Lua source file, and we're going to add some traffic in. So in its simplest form, we can define an object, which will be a traffic object. So let's just call this one piston, for example. That can equal, so it's rat, a new rat object, new, and then we will call whatever our template name is that we're going to name it. So let's just call it piston. And we have to drop a piston aircraft in our mission editor. It doesn't matter where it is, and just have it set to load activated, and that'll be our template aircraft that we're going to use. All right, so we've got that in there, and then I could simply just put piston start spawn, say 10, and there's our rat script done. So there's a pretty simple one. It'll use Moose, and it'll spawn whatever that template aircraft piston is. It'll spawn 10 of them randomly at a coalition airfield or neutral airfield, and then they'll fly between any of the coalition or neutral airfields. And I can't control where they go or where they fly or what they do. So that's probably not what we want for our environment. So if we have a look at something like the actual area that we fly. So this is Jefferson FD. It's a high IFR chart, and we're looking at the area we're going to be building our mission in. So there's McCarran there, and here's the NTTR out here. And if you have a look at the airways, you can see they generally fly around it, because getting clearances to fly through this stuff's a pain for civil aircraft. So generally they'll fly around it. If it's not active, you might get a direct. But let's set our traffic so that they fly from, say, Las Vegas out along one of these airways out here to OAL, and they could come down here to Daggett, and maybe we'll have some going up this way to Milford, and maybe another one up here to BCE along those airways. So they'll be our 4 airways we use, and we want our traffic, our airline traffic, to fly along there. Now the civil traffic we want to fly just locally around the region. So that's the basic setup we're sort of thinking. So let's jump back into the classes guide, and there's some examples on how to set up aircraft flying to different places. So sending to takeoff air, sending them to a destination zone, or you can actually just set destination and then call a table of zones or table of airports. So in this case, for our piston aircraft, we're going to use airports because we want it to fly locally. So let's go back into the mission editor, drop our piston aircraft in there. So we'll leave it as a US one. What about we make it a Cessna 210. So this is from the civil aircraft mod, and we're going to call it piston to align with what we called our template. We're going to make sure it's late activated, and we're going to drop it somewhere. So let's drop them along the bottom here. Okay. So there we have a aircraft called Piston. It is the group name that matters, but we're going to get rid of that -1 there just to keep the pilot name, so the unit name and the group name the same. Late activated, and that's all we have to do. So now our previous little bit of script, which if we go back to our previous bit of script, is so many windows open, hang on. Okay. That would work. We could save that, trigger load Moose, trigger load this script, and we'll get Piston aircraft spawning. And we want to make it, we want to have them going to certain airports to keep them clear of this NTTR. So what we're going to do is, let's just have a quick look at the mission editor. You'll see you really just don't want them flying across here, from Beatty to say Lincoln, right through the middle of it, or from Mesa through the middle. So we want to keep them clear. So we're going to give them departure airports and destinations that will keep them clear, and then we'll let them random spawn at those airports and then head to the other one. So anywhere from around Vegas, heading up here, fine, or heading up this way is fine also. And those airways we saw, there's Milford there, we'll drop some zones in to get our airline traffic to going out to those places, and that will make it reasonably realistic. So let's start by setting up our Piston aircraft first. Let's jump into our script. And we talked about using a rat manager. Well, we're not going to start Piston like that, so I'm just going to delete that out. That's not how I want to start them. I want to use the rat manager to start them. So the first one we need to do is Piston set departure. With a capital D in there. Okay, and then we could give it a departure airport, but we want to make a table. So to make a table, we do that. And we go to our mission editor, which we'll have a look at. And to say to fly out of Henderson, because they're not going to be flying out of Nellis, so out of Henderson, we can just grab that exact name, the way it's written there, exact capitalization, and add Henderson in. So back to our script. So let's add Henderson Executive. And we need to put that in quotations like that. And then we wanted heading up, maybe up this way, up to right up the end maybe. Or what about just to Jane? Okay, that's easy enough. And so all we're doing is building a table of airports that we want it to use here. So we've got Henderson, Jean, and then the next one up here will be, what do we have it going? Just a local flight maybe, up to North Las Vegas. That sounds pretty reasonable. So we'll chuck that in there. Okay, so there's some departure airports, so we'll have them departing from there. Let's bracket. All right, so there's our departure airports, Piston, and then let's set from arrival airports that keep them clear. So set destination. And again, we're going to create a table in here. And let's grab, how about we grab, let's get, that'll do. And maybe Echo Bay. What else we got around here? Lachlan. And yeah, that should keep them clear just, as long as they're departing from where we've specified down that end from Lincoln County. And then one up here from Beatty. Okay, so that should work pretty well. So let's grab some names out of here and chuck them in here. In the interest of brevity, I just added them in quickly. Okay, so there's our destinations, and if they're flying from any of those 3 departure airports to the other ones, they'll stay clear of our restricted airspace in the NTTR and arrive there. Righto. It would be cool if they went backwards and forwards just to keep traffic, so they could depart from any of these destination airports and come back. So there's an option to set them to commute. So piston, and then you've got commute. Now with commute, you have to have parking areas that these aircrafts fit in. So when you read all the stuff in the classes guide, you'll note that there's a big discussion on what aircraft fit where. If there's not a parking spot for them, they'll despawn when they touch down on the runway, and they won't commute back because they haven't been able to park and shut down. So you've got to be sure that the aircraft that you're using have somewhere to park at the airports they're commuting. Now, all these airports have a place for a Cessna 210 to park, so I don't have any issue with that. Where you come unhinged is with larger aircraft. For example, say a C-130, which we're going to add to this map or to this mission. There's only 2 airports on this map that they can commute from, and that's Nellis and, well, 3 actually, Nellis, Tonopah Range and Lachlan. So they're the only 3 airports on this map. If we have a look at the mission editor, that will take a C-130 sized aircraft. So there's no point putting Creech in as a commuting spot, because it'll just fly there, land, despawn on the runway. And not only does it look stupid, it won't commute for you. Now that might be okay if that's what you want to achieve, but in this case it's not. So it's a bit of a limitation of DCS. The other thing with piston engine aircraft, we go back to our script again. They don't tend to fly that high. So let's pretend our 210's unpressurized, which it most probably is. So we want to set a max flight level. So it's flight level max with a, yeah, like that. So piston set flight level max, and then you put your flight level in, so 100. So they'll only go up to 10,000 feet and fly around. So that's good for piston aircraft. We can set it to whatever we like, or we can set a flight level cruise, which we will for the jet aircraft, because where we want them typically to cruise. And we'll have a look at some more info on setting flight level max, min and cruise. Now, the other thing you can do is you could create a whole series of different objects that look the same and have different liveries by adding a livery on your template. So if we have a look at the mission editor again, and the template aircraft we drop down, our 210, Okay, at the moment it's got the blank livery, but comes with a whole different bunch of liveries. Now that probably doesn't suit me to have it randomly chucking that livery in. That could be cool, considering where we're flying it. So I could set the template like that and then create a whole bunch of different objects, all flying between the same place, and then it'll fly with those templates. Or there's a lot easier way to do it, which we can go back into our script and we'll script what livery we want it to have. So our piston object again, livery, and let's put another table in here of what the liveries are called. Now, the way to find out what the liveries are called is the simplest way is to find out what the folder names are for each livery in your aircraft liveries folder, and whatever that name is will probably be the livery name. So I've picked a few out in the interest of brevity that work for this Cessna 210. So let's chuck those in here. And there we go. So now our piston will be in one of those three liveries randomly. And that's all we have to do, except use a rat manager or piston start and tell it how many you want it to do, and they'll all spawn and start moving around between those airports. We're going to use a rat manager, so I won't need to start it. One thing I do find pretty handy, especially to make it a bit more realistic, is having ATC messages pop up every time one of these things flies around. Yeah, it just breaks it for me. So I set that to false. That way they'll just fly around. They won't be using ATC messages. And let's face it, the ATC and DCS is not the best. In fact, the AI are not the best. So there we go. So we've defined our first object, which is going to be piston engine aircraft flying around the map between the airports we've specified up to a maximum of 10,000 feet, randomizing the livery. And then we're going to start it with a rat manager, which we'll look at soon. So let's have a quick look at the next thing, which will be building another aircraft that we want to spawn. So I wanted to do some airliners because I think that'll make it cool, flying out of McCarran generally or into McCarran. So really we can just copy what we've got there and edit it. But it's probably best I just copy something like this and I'll add it. This is from one of my previous scripts. Okay, so an A320D, which is going to be departure, and the template's going to be called A320. Set departure airport will be from McCarran, and then it's going to fly to a destination which is going to be one of these 4 zones randomly. And those airways we're talking about. And then you can see it's going to cruise flight level 300. And if you go back to here, and here's a bit of a information on how the cruise function works. So number of aircraft, what you set, and it'll randomly add them in here between this curve. So give a bit more dynamic sort of nature to the traffic. So they're not always at the same altitude. I mean, generally in real life, the planes tend to fly roughly at the same altitude, unless they're getting blocked. But it's because it's just fuel efficient to fly up higher. So in this case, if we duck out of there, back to our script, you can see I put the departures, I put them departing out at flight level 300, so 30,000 feet. I've also set a climb rate in, 2800. The default's 1500, and if I didn't put anything in there, they'll climb out at 1500 feet per minute. For transport category jet aircraft, even that's a bit low. At low altitude, you'd be more climbing at 3700 feet, and then tapering off as you get higher. So I've just put 2800 feet in to get them up and away a bit quicker. And then I've done the same with the liveries, and ATC message is false. So the only thing we need to really define here is these airline zones. So let's jump into our mission editor, and we can put them where we were going to put them. So all they are is a standard zone, and I said I was going to put one out this way, OAL, drop one there, and we named them airline zone -1. Airline space zone -1. And we don't have to do anything more than that. There it is. And so that'll be one of our airways that they're flying on. Now I'm just going to drop the other three around just by copy and paste this. Control C, and then we said we're going to have one down there, Daggett, heading out that way. So there's Daggett there, so we'll put him here. There's airline zone -2, and we're going to have one up at Milford, which is somewhere up here, there. Airline zone 3, and then 4, we're going to have one out this way. Righto. So there you go. Airline zone 4. All right, so there's our 4 main airways in and out of Vegas that we've sort of determined are reasonably realistic. All right, so we've got that in. Back to our script again. Okay. And there's our departure traffic out of McCarran. And I just noticed McCarran is not called McCarran International Airport, it's just called McCarran International. Okay, so I just got to change that, otherwise I won't be able to find that airport. There we go. Now the zones are fine because that's what they're called. All right, so let's copy and paste that. Back in again. And this time it will be A320 traffic set to spawn in the air, arriving at McCarran. Righto. So we'll have to change this from a D to an A because we have to call it something else. We can still use the same template, that's fine, A320. Change it all the way through to A320A for arrivals. So we're creating a different object but using the same template. Okay. I don't need this rate of climb there because they're going to be arriving, so it's just a waste of a line. Set max cruise. Well, arriving they're probably a bit higher, so let's put them at 340. And we need to reverse this destination departure, so we want them coming out of one of these 4 zones and then departing from these zones and then arriving at McCarran. Righto, so now we just need to find, reverse these two. So what I'll do is just take the airline zones and put them up as a departure. And we'll put McCarran from here as the new destination. Righto, done. Okay, the only thing we need to do here now, if it tried to spawn a departure at any of these zones, well, there's no parking there, so they just won't spawn and it won't happen. So we need to set them to take off in the air. So let's, so A320A, and you can put set takeoff There we go. All right, so they'll take off in the air at one of these zones and then make their way back. Now we can't commute them because there's no parking, so that's why I've had to set it up this way, that we have arriving and departing traffic being separate objects. So now, rather than just tapping away building script, I want to make this as dynamic as I can. So we're going to add some 737s doing the same thing, as well as the 320s. So how about if we just do something like this? A little bit of something I prepared earlier. The only thing, this has changed now since I wrote this script originally. And that's changed. Righto. So there we have now 737 departures, 737 arrivals, all set up, liveries set up, no messages. All right, now we still need to define in our mission editor those template aircraft, and we'll do that. So let's jump in there and do that. So back to the mission editor, have a look at our previous template aircraft, which was the piston there. The easiest way to do this is, because you've already set it up, late activated, is just Control C, copy and paste. Not that one. Control C, one of those, and Control V, and this time change it to a airliner. So we needed an A320. So there we are, A320, and it was going to be called A320. That's what we had in our template. Just for consistency, change the pilot's name. All right, so there's our A320 template, and that's what it looks like. Now it's not going to come up with that livery, because we've specified what liveries we want to use. And let's just add another one, which is our 737. Obviously you can add any aircraft in here, but I think this fits our purpose. And it was called B737. I don't know. That's not a 737. That's a 727. That's better. Alrighto. It'll come up with different liveries. The liveries I put in there was some UPS, Lone Star, things like that. Like that. Alright. So there we are. We've got our template set. We've got our traffic set. And now we just need to add a rat manager. While we're here, what about if we just add, let's add a C-130 that spawns at Nellis and goes, so let's go back into our script. And we will do C-130 spawns Nellis and commutes to, say, Lachlan and Tonopah. Tonopah range. Okay, they're the only two places it can go between those three airports. All right. So again, I had a lot of different types of spawns in this previous thing, so let's grab it out. Control C, I'll just drop it in. This is a script that I'm poaching from myself from a different server mission that I made a long time ago. And since then, some of the airport names have changed in the mission. So Nellis Air Force Base is now just called Nellis. I know that. So let's get rid of that. Lachlan's Lachlan, Tonopah Test Range. What's that? Back to the mission editor. Yeah, still Tonopah Test Range. Okay, no, Tonopah Test Range, not airfield, just range. And Lachlan, I think, is just Lachlan because we just put that in before. It is. Okay. So we just need to change two of those to match. Get rid of that airfield. All right. Now that's why quite often, instead of using the actual names in here, people will use the Moose script names for those airports, because that way, if they do change in game, the guys at Moose will go through and change the main Moose script to match, and that way your scripts will keep working. So that's not a bad way to do it, but this is basic Moose, so we're just keeping it basic. All right, there we go. So we've got a C-130 that's going to rock out of Nellis. It's going to commute. Going to fly at 16,000. That should keep above the hills. That's something to think about here, is the hills are quite high in Nevada, and if you try to fly too low, you'll find your aircraft will have issues. Rate of climb, 2100, and no messages. All right. Let's drop a C-130 in the editor. All right. So copy and paste another one of these. Now you can see it's a lot easier than setting up a whole bunch of routes in, and waypoints for aircraft, and then having triggers for when they spawn. We're just simple scripting, dropping templates in and doing it. So in this case, it's going to be a C-130. It's going to be called C-130. The simpler you make your naming conventions, the less chances you have of messing it up. Okay, late activated. We could change the whatever we like, but we'll just make it a standard USAF one, likely to be seen around there. There we go. And again, we could add liveries, but we're not going to. All right. done. So that's the livery it'll use, whatever I've selected on the template, because we haven't told it to do anything else. Right, template's pretty much done. And now we just have to go back into our script and set up our rat manager. So if we have a look at the classes guide and what it's got on rat manager here. So you're creating a new object, which is rat manager new, and then we're going to give it some tasks, which is to basically spawn in and manage the numbers of aircraft that we've just created as objects. So it's going to manage the objects we've created, if that makes sense. Here's how to do it. Another way to do it. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. But this is not a bad way. So I'm going to do it like this. We're going to select a new manager, the maximum number of aircraft that it'll have spawned at any one time. And you've got to remember to keep this realistic because it will affect your performance on the server, especially when you get a lot of clients joining. And also will block up your airports and make them unusable. So generally I try to not have too many aircraft out of the airfields that the players are going to fly out of, because the AI are hopeless. They taxi slowly, and it's a recipe for disaster. So let's use this local manager, rat manager new, and we'll then give it some parameters. So see this manager add. This is adding in your aircraft, that the objects you've created, and then how many of them, the maximum it can add in as part of this 25. And then you start it. And you can set it to stop at a time. That's seconds into the mission. So we just want it to start. We want it to run until the end of the mission. So back to our script. And we are going to set up rat manager. And I am going to dump some code in there, and then we'll talk about it. There we go. All right, so we're creating a new manager called manager, new rat manager. It's going to have a maximum of 10 spawns at any one time. So once one despawns, it'll spawn another one. It'll only have 2 320s departing, 2 320s arriving, 7 37s, two of each, and 3 pistons. We don't have a P3 in this one, so I'll take that out. And it'll add 1 C-130 in, departing and then commuting. So we have a total of, what's that, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we could have a potential 12 aircraft. It will only have 10. So something's going to miss out here, which is good because it adds to the randomizing. And then manager, start in 30 seconds. So let's change that to 10 seconds. So it'll start a bit quicker in the mission. All right, let's save that. Alrighty. So there's our super simple but extensive script for rat, and that's it. That's all we need. There'll be a copy of this in the notes below, so you can poach it to your heart's content and then play around with it and create your own cool random traffic. But let's see how it runs. So back to the mission editor we go, and you can see I have at mission start moose asset loading, and then once after 4 seconds, time more than 4, I'm going to asset load this script, which is called rat Nevada 1.lua. So let's just have a rat Nevada, I think it might be space 1.lua, or maybe not. I'll try that, rat Nevada 1.lua. lure. Okay, let's save it. And let's fly. So we're just going to spectate and see these things spawn in. So we know they're going to spawn in 14 seconds after the mission starts, because it's 4 seconds plus the 10 for the manager to start spawning them in. Here we go. Okay, so now we're in the game. We don't want to join that slot. We just want to back out to spectators, and then we'll jump straight to the F10 map. And so 14 seconds into the mission, we should see the rat manager start generating the first spawns. So there's 10 seconds, 14, and we are starting to get some aircraft spawning. So we just had a 737 spawn out here at OAL. Now let's have a look at him. And yeah, Lone Star livery. And what else we got? An A320 spawned down at Daggett on its way to McCarran. Let's make sure. Yeah, Delta livery. And we've got some piston engine aircraft spawning. We've got some other air spawns, 7.3 and an A320 that have come out at Milford. So there we have our dynamic traffic. We've got a C-130 that spawned at Nellis. So let's have a look at that. And it's going to start its commute. So we said we'd only want one of those. So it's starting up on the ramp, and it will make its way either to Tonopah range or to Lachlan. Alrighty, well, there's rat in a box. We've made it so the traffic is spawning where we want it to, and commuting, keeping clear of the restricted airspace. And as you can see, it's very easy to implement. For a 6-hour mission running on a server, it's great to have this traffic just moving around, doing their own thing. Certainly adds a lot more immersion into the game. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.